Okay, so like I never know if it plays anymore. Did my second video play or no? I have no idea. Okay, so I have pop-ups. Every time I go live, I have pop-ups that pop up on my screen, and it's starting to piss me off. But anyways, welcome in. It is College Sportscast. This is the Big Fuss Show. We are here for week 27, season 3, and we're going to bring you some.
Can I please have your attention? There's all a commotion around here.
What are you talking about?
Let them yap at you.
It's actually very exciting.
All right. Well, you guys go with College Sportscast. We are part of Stadium Rant. This is the fuss or the rant here tonight. So just want to throw that out there from the very beginning. If you are with us on Facebook, we always start out the show with appreciation for our Facebook and YouTube followers. If you're with us on Facebook, you can help support us by sending stars. It does help make us earn a little bit of money to continue to make content for you guys. Or you can subscribe. It's only 99 cents a month. Subscribe to the page. And with the 99 cents, you do get your own chat room for subscribers and your own page. And we appreciate you for that. So, all right. Now, got somebody on YouTube. No, that's not exactly what's going on. I have no idea. I was on this computer for the last 45 minutes loading stuff in for this show. Nothing popped up, but that's the second time now recently. Every time I click the show on, there is some pop-ups that come on, which makes no sense. Have no idea.
I want to say something real quick. Breaking news at the top, just at the top of the hour. Kentucky news. Looking like Lamont Butler and Jackson Robinson is going to play tomorrow night. For everybody,
I was definitely going to get to that.
A lot of rejoicing in Kentucky land right now because they make a difference on the floor with this team. They're a totally different team with them out on the court. I consider this game as big as Auburn game. I say that because you got to win this game, Brad. You got to go on the road and win this kind of game because you don't want to lose this game because it could knock you out of the seed and pecking order. You could go from, say, a 3 to a 4 really quick with a loss to Oklahoma. So I think this is a big opportunity, and I think getting these guys back and getting them healthy and getting them on the court, I think is a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a big deal. So about 10 after 7, the SEC availability reports come out, and what John is talking about is Butler and Robinson were both listed as probable for tomorrow night.
Not doubtful, not out, but probable.
Probable. That's actually a really, really good sign for tomorrow night. And I'm surprised. I kind of knew that Butler was going to be close to playing. Robinson's the one that I'm actually pretty surprised about for tomorrow night.
Yeah, that's the one that I was kind of, they had been talked, maybe Auburn, maybe senior night LSU, but nothing in the terms of him coming back.
Well, I did hear yesterday late that he was looking pretty good shooting. So it's his right wrist, which is his shooting wrist, that's been hurt. And he hasn't been able to shoot or practice for the last couple of weeks with that wrist. But he did a couple of days ago. And I had heard last night that he was actually looking pretty good shooting the ball. So that's pretty good updates. If you're a Kentucky fan,
I just kind of wanted to bring that up before we got started.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Kentucky fan, that's pretty good updates.
Yeah, it is.
All right, some other things going on in the college basketball world. Utah fired their coach.
Yep. Right as they was playing pretty good basketball. Right on the cusp of the conference tournament, right next to March Madness. I'm kind of shocked that he was fired this quick. Right
He's in his fourth season. I think they're 15-12, but they had won a couple of games, here lately.
Something like that. They beat Kansas. I know they won 2 or 3 games there in a row. They was playing really good basketball. I think they just lost a recent game, but I felt like he was doing a really good job. But apparently the administration wanted to go other ways, and I felt like if you're going to do that, I think you have to do that at the end of all, conference tournament or even March Madness. Like you can't pull the plug right in the middle of the year. I don't think that, to me, that's kind of
here's some news that I have heard, and this is going to kind of relate to Kentucky. So I have heard for Kentucky fans to not be surprised if Cody Fuger's name comes up for that Utah job.
Mm-hmm.
So Cody, of course, was with Pope at Utah Valley State and BYU. And on top of that, his alma mater is Utah.
Yeah. So, I mean,
just throwing that out there. I had to bring that up because I had heard a rumor that they're not saying for sure that he will get the job because he's not been a head coach. But the name coming up and maybe getting an interview or something, them wanting to come for an interview is not completely out of the question.
No.
With the assistant coach, Cody Fuger, who is Pope's right-hand man, to be quite honest.
But it probably won't come until after the season's over in March, most likely. Now,
probably.
You're probably going to get called.
I'm just saying down the road, don't be surprised if you hear his name tied to this Utah job.
Yeah, he will be.
Head coaching situation here. All right, another hot topic today, John.
Speaking of which, just while we're here, Georgia was up 24 points. They now trail Florida by 1.
Wow, really?
Yes.
Okay.
And Florida looks like.
All right, another hot topic I want to get to real quick before we get into topics. Today, John, we just had a hot topic. I had a rant last week on this show about the job that Hubert Davis is not doing at North Carolina as a blue blood.
Mm-hmm.
And today they announced that he got a contract extension.
Yeah, through 2030.
In the blue blood world is going on at North Carolina?
I mean, he took them to what? The Final Four, a couple years ago?
Final game on a run where they just got hot towards the end of the season. They almost didn't make it in the tournament that year, by the way.
And to add to that, they've struggled this year. Now they're playing a lot better. I will give them that. They've won some games here.
2 years ago, they were the preseason number 1 and missed the tournament.
And the ACC as a whole is not great. They should get in if they continue to keep winning. But there was a time there in the regular season, especially this year, that they was going to possibly miss the tournament. And if they
Oh,
was to miss the
they're
tournament,
not out of the woods yet.
no, not yet. That's 2
They
times.
might miss the tournament this year.
And if they was to miss the tournament, that's what 2 times in the last
3 years.
3 years, and that
Yes.
just don't happen. That just don't happen at North Carolina.
I just don't quite understand it. They extended him through the 2029 season, I think, or 2030 season is the contract that they extended him through. It really doesn't make sense to me, to be quite honest with you. I don't quite get it. I thought that his job was going to be hot. I mean, he was at least, I don't know that he should have got fired, but in my opinion, he definitely should have been sitting on a hot seat.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I mean, and instead, they give him an extension.
By the way, Georgia just retook the lead. Georgia just retook the lead. This game is absolutely insane right now.
Okay.
Big bubble chances for Georgia.
I mean,
Georgia needs it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. 100%. All right, John, we're going to get into something. Going to talk a little bit about this. I wrote an article that come out today about NCAA college sports, a possible new enforcement entity coming along for college sports, basically. And you can go to Stadium Rant, check it out. It's basically the power conferences are putting this together. There is a board of 2 athletic directors of the SEC, 2 of the Big 10, 2 of the Big 12, 2 of the ACC, and then they're going to hire a CEO.
Yep.
All right. And they're putting together a plan to, after this new revenue share thing comes in, to have rules and regulations and to have an enforcement arm that will divvy out penalties if you don't abide by the rules, which is an actual good thing.
Yep.
But I kind of wanted to get into it a little bit tonight because there's some pretty, I think, good stuff in this. So first and foremost, John, the NCAA settlement, antitrust settlement, has to be passed. The last hearing is set for April the 7th. The expectations are that the judge will pass it. This is the final step, April the 7th. Of course, sometimes in legal things, judges don't always do what people expect them to do. So the first thing is this thing's got to pass first. That's the first step. And once it does, so the power conferences have put this together where the NCAA will just do the education side of things, whether or not players are available and eligible due to academics and scholarships and things of that nature.
Computers acting crazy.
Do what?
I said my computer's been acting crazy the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. The power conferences are putting this together. So basically the revenue share has a cap. So you can't exceed the cap. You can't use boosters and third parties to there's still going to be third parties, but there's going to be a fair market value for your players. You cannot exceed the fair market value. If you do, you're liable to see penalties. John, some of the penalties that I have been reading up on would be, so let's say the fair market value of a player is, let's call it $1 million, okay? And let's say you get caught paying this guy $2 million. It's $1 million over.
Mm-hmm.
The way I understand it is you could lose cap space for the next year for that $1 million, and you're going to have to pay a fine to up to 5 times that amount for the school. That's pretty significant.
It is.
For these power conferences. Also, it could fall back on coaches. They could suspend coaches for games, and they are putting in an arbitration, kind of like the pros do, John. They're putting in an arbitration court. It'll take 45 days to go through arbitration, but that's pretty quick. And if they lose the arbitration case, they could be deemed ineligible for the entire year because they got more money than they should have. That's pretty harsh. So what I'm getting at, guys, is the last few years, college sports has basically been the wild, wild west.
Yeah, and with this, you're going to have
whatever you could pay off at their doorstep. Well, that's not going to be the case anymore. If all this goes through, there is going to be checks and balances for all of this crap, to be quite honest, which will be a fantastic thing, I think, for college sports, especially college football. John, I think it affects football probably more than it does basketball. What do you think? It does,
especially during the year you got teams tampering with other players. Well, you have that in basketball. You have that in basketball too, but you see it a lot more on the football level side of things. And then you got the whole transparency thing about it, where it's going to, give each team an opportunity to get levels to rules, to fix rules in that normally wouldn't be legal or illegal. I just overall, I think it's a powerful thing. I think it's great.
So the cap is going to be about $21 million.
Well,
I do too, man. I'm really looking forward to it. I've been screaming that we got to have some enforcement for all these rules, and we haven't had any. The cap is going to be around $21 million, John. Yeah, but that isn't $21 million for just football. That's $21 million for every sports athletic program combined together.
And Mike brought up a good point. He said, what's to say these big-time players go to a non-power teams and just go to a place for the money and not to win? But see, here's the kicker with all this. This is not going to affect probably the mid-major schools or the small schools. This is going to affect mostly Power 5.
No, that's what he's talking about, going to a non-power team. That's what he's talking about.
Oh, okay. I see what he's saying now.
Because this is just for the power conference.
Yeah, this is for the Power 5 side of things.
Yeah. This is just for the power conferences, basically. It's controlled by the power conferences, and it will be for more than just football. This is basketball. This is women's basketball. This is your softball and your baseball, and every athletic team that you have falls under this umbrella with the antitrust revenue sharing settlement here. You'll have about $21 million, and you kind of have to play that out and say, I'm going to have $10 million for here and $2 million for here and $2 million for here and $1 million for these, and you're going to have to spread that around. It's going to make for a huge, huge change, especially, I think, in college football.
Yep.
The last few years, John, I mean, if you could drop a $13 million to somebody and just buy somebody, that's who a lot of these people are signing for.
Yep.
Signing with. Well, you're not going to be able to pay $13 million for one recruit when your whole damn budget's $21 million.
No, it's going to be cut. That's going to be cut in half.
I mean, you're not going to be able to do that. And this is going to go into effect July 1st of this year for the next football season.
Yep.
So it's going to make a big difference in things. And if you want to know a little bit more about it, please go to Stadium Rant and look up NCAA College Sports, a new enforcement entity. That is my article that I put out today. You can go check that out. And I would appreciate it. One other thing before we move off, because this is kind of footballish, before we move off of football here, John, I wanted to ask you, a lot of these spring games seems to be going away. I know why. I just wanted to see what you thought about a lot of these teams canceling the spring games.
I kind of agree with it. And then on the other kind of side of it, I think it's a good thing, but I get it from a standpoint where you get injuries, guys playing, you get the opportunity to see certain players out on the field, a bunch of guys you haven't seen yet take the field, like, say, top freshmen. But I don't know. I'm kind of cross between yes and no with a lot of this, because you really don't see a lot in these spring games. You basically have the quarterback wearing a red tape over him, like you don't get to see him do much. The quarterback don't get to do very much in these games. It's mostly it's a glorified scrimmage, all-star game basically. And I think
John,
it's just,
I'll tell you what's going on and why these teams are canceling them. Okay. So here's what's going on. It's the transfer portal.
yeah, that
And
too.
the game, there used to be games and it was live TV and they would come out and air these spring games. Okay. Well, what's happening is there's been a whole lot of tampering going on, which tampering is part of that package that we were just talking about as well. You're not going to be able to do that either with kids under contract. That's going to be enforced as well. So go check that out. But here's the deal. The reason why they're doing this is after the spring, there is another transfer portal. So if you see a kid that you like, you can just go out and say, hey, let's go get that kid. That kid at Nebraska looked really good. That kid at Texas looked really good. Let's go make him an offer.
Yep.
Well, guess what? Because the transfer portal is open before and after spring, a lot of these coaches are saying, hey, I'm not going to show the world the players that we just got out of the portal. Why am I doing that? When I just got 20 players out of the portal, why am I going to put it out there for everybody to see so somebody can come along and offer my player a bag? Yeah. And a lot of people are canceling their spring games because of it. Nebraska canceled theirs. Texas canceled theirs. USC canceled theirs. Big-time schools are canceling their spring games. And that's exactly the reason why.
Yep.
All right. So looks like he said Florida got beat.
Yep. And I wanted to bring up this. This is my topic for the night. I wanted to bring up, I had mentioned to you about the basketball side of things, the reviews and the fouling and all that good stuff.
Well, I've So I kind of broke it up into two things.
Oh, okay.
First, I was gonna start with the time slots for games, and this could be football or basketball because I felt like last year in football was kind of the same deal.
Yep.
So used to, John, and by used to, I'm talking about for a lot of years. From if you go back from like 25 years ago to about 5 years ago, for the most part, most uh, college football games lasted about 3 hours. Most college basketball games lasted about 2 hours. However, over the last 4 or 5 years, there's been a ton more reviews and stoppages in these games. And what we are seeing, John, is you go to tune on to turn on a game at 8 o'clock, and your team is supposed to be playing, and they still got the game on before, and there's 8 minutes to go left in this game.
Yeah. You know, that's like there was a game the other night. SEC Network there was a 2-hour time slot. You know, the game was still almost halfway through, almost a halftime. The ESPN's getting bad with it, like scheduling games. You know, no game should take 2.5 hours to play. You know,
well, we'll talk about that a little bit more in the next segment because it kind of ties together with this. But
they got to figure out these time slots,
like why it's taking longer.
2 hours clearly isn't enough.
It's not.
Start the game.
And to be quite honest with you, John, I think even in football, they're going to have to start doing like 3 hours and 15 minutes, 3 hours and 30 minutes in between games. And basketball, you're going to have to at least do 15-minute extra intervals.
Well,
so if you want to do 3 games a night, you do like 5:30.
6:45 would probably be the best bet, and then start one at 9.
Right.
But here's the biggest question though: how do you handle all the games in general? Because you got so many games. Do you put every game at 6:45? Because there's certain games that start at 7, certain games start at 7:30, 8 o'clock.
Well, Clyde, we talked about it off the top of the show. They're probable, not questionable.
They're not questionable, Clyde. They're probable. So I think you start early and you give the other networks a chance to kind of get it in with the 9 o'clock games.
So the debate with this is a lot of people jump on and say, well, they started on the ESPN app. You can watch it, or it's on ESPN News. They switch it. You can watch it. But here's the deal, John. A lot of the older folk don't have all that. They don't like my granny is living, okay? And she's old. I mean, I'm not gonna say it any other way. She's 96 years old. Okay, she has no clue on any electronics. She has none of that. She has no computer. She has no. She don't even have a cell phone that has the data on it. Okay. She has no clue on any of it, but she religiously watches Kentucky games. But for her, she flips on her TV and she flips on ESPN, and she's got to watch Auburn and Ole Miss till 8:40 when her game's supposed to be on at 8 o'clock, and she misses pretty much the entire first half.
Yep. It's a problem.
And to be quite honest with you, it sucks. I mean, there's a third of the population that doesn't have all that stuff, at least.
No.
So I think you've got to change the time slots and start expanding them out, because clearly these games are not taking the same amount of time that they used to take 10, 12, 15, 20 years ago.
Yep.
They're not. And here's one of the reasons why.
Yep. I want to make my point with this.
Go ahead.
You know, I understand that they want to get calls right, okay? But there has to be a middle ground. We can't be taking this long, Brad, at the end of the games to ensure a play is 100% correct. There's got to be a time limit, unless there's some other solution. The end of game scenarios are already due to timeouts. Coaches treat them like they're on a executive order, basically. They use them nonstop late in the game. Then the clock, like I said, the clock reviews, I don't think shouldn't be allowed at all, except determine if the shot went off before the end of the half or the game. Now, if there's an error, maybe. Like I said, timeouts, ridiculous. Even in overtime, they get more timeouts in overtime. It's 5 minutes. The game gets even longer with overtime. The fouling late in the games, stopping the clock, it's just out of control. The clock to
John,
me is
I'm going to tell you a little story. You're talking about out of control, okay? So Saturday, the Vanderbilt Ole Miss game, okay? I was trying to finish up watching the end of that game. This was before the Kentucky game come on Saturday. And they got to the 2 minutes, okay? And from 2 minutes to 1 minute and 2 seconds on the clock. This is at the end of the second half. At the 2 minutes, they can start going to the monitor, okay? From 2 minutes to 1 minute and 2 seconds, so 58 seconds on the clock is all that went off. They went to the monitor 4 times. 4 times. Twice for out of bounds to see who the ball went off of.
Well,
and twice for fouls.
Here's another thing I want to add to this. It's how the last 2 minutes of the game are officiated too. It takes almost an hour to finish 2 minutes, it seems like. Refs don't – to
That's
me,
what I'm saying. It literally took these people – that Vandy game, John, it took them like 25 minutes to get from 2 minutes to 1.
Well, it ruins the game, and we're stuck watching referees at a monitor. There's no flow to the game. They're giving free timeouts. Most people just want to watch college basketball. And here's another thing. It
was insane. And this was a 7-8 point game, too.
I don't even think officials make calls anymore. I think they just say something, and then they immediately they just want to run to the monitor just to see.
Here's my thing, John. I don't mind getting the call right. Here's what I have an issue with. They run to the monitor, and all 3 of them have to get over there, and they have to talk, and they have to put headsets on, and they have to switch and put their headsets on and do all this, and they have to talk, and one watches, and then the other one watches, and then the other one switches and puts the headsets on, and the other one watches, and then they sat and they convene for 2 or 3 minutes, and all the while you are sitting there. It takes these idiots, and yes, I'm calling them idiots. It takes these idiots 6, 7, 8 minutes for one damn review.
There was a game, maybe it was this year, Brad. Was it Seton Hall, Providence, maybe? It was early in the year. It took four reviews in 51 seconds of game time and probably more than 7 minutes of real time.
Here's an idea. I'm just going to throw it out there. How about we put a 90-second clock on these damn reviews? Just going to throw it out there. I don't know. Maybe we speed up the flow of these damn games. I don't care if you go to the monitor to get the call right under the 2 minutes. That's not the problem. How about we have a 90-second clock?
Well, and then you got this issue. Say you got 15 seconds left, Brad. Maybe both teams have one timeout left. I don't know. Guy hits a shot. They stop play to review if there should be 14, 13 seconds left. They uphold the call. Team can't inbound the ball, and they call a timeout, right? Well, there's a foul call. Officials go to the monitor to see if there were certain minutes or seconds on it. It's a rinse and repeat cycle 5 more times until the game finally ends.
And then they have to go for the clock. Was the clock exactly right? And they go back and they add 3 tenths. Come on, dude.
Make all reviews by a coach's challenge, I think, and have them lose a timeout if it doesn't go their way. Right now, Brad, there is 0 penalty.
Listen, I say 60 seconds too, but it sure as hell shouldn't take 6 minutes to make a call.
It's always been bad and only made worse with this replay stuff. End of game basketball.
Or I'll give you something even better. They still should have a time clock on it, but I'll give you something even better, John. How about we go to where, like they do in the pro, I know they do it in the WNBA at least, where a coach has, say, 2 challenges.
Yeah.
And a coach can challenge a play. If you win it, you keep your challenge. If you lose it, you lose that challenge.
Yeah. In the games in basketball, Brad, whether it's NBA, college, whatever, women's, should be some of the most fun times in sports, especially if it's tight. And it's the worst in the sport.
I'm going to tell you, seriously, John, the end of that Vandy game the other day was miserable. I was screaming at the TV for these ignorant-ass refs to make the call.
Here's another part that if the end of games were called the way that most of these games were called through the whole game, a lot of people wouldn't sit there and watch it. They would just probably turn the channel or move somewhere else. Like, the foul stuff is getting out of hand too. Like, you got 20 fouls in like 3 minutes. Like, when a team's down, 6 or 7, the fouling, the going to the line, changing the times on the clock. It's out of control.
Well, the biggest thing with the time, if you're going to go to the clock and the time's messed up, okay, I get it. If the time's messed up and you're going to add 2.1 seconds, okay, I get it. If you go to stop the whole game, take an extra 3 minutes. Meanwhile, the coaches are huddling up with their teams, by the way, and getting an extra timeout, by the way, just so you know, every time that happens. But if it's taking you 3 minutes and you come back and add 0.2 of a second, come on, dude, what are we doing?
Yeah, it's just not fun basketball. These end of game. Georgia game was another prime example tonight. Pat Adams, late in the game, continued going back and forth to the monitor.
They do it almost every game, it seems like. It's just
every
ridiculous.
single game.
It takes it's miserable watching the end of these basketball games.
Well, and you got March Madness coming up. A lot of these games are going to take 4 hours to play.
I agree with you, Mike. I don't think they should be getting an extra timeout and huddling up with their teams either, but they allow it every time. They get an extra timeout, huddle up with their players. Hell, they could probably go change clothes in the damn dressing room, come back out before they make the call half the time.
Well, they could probably order a pizza by the time they got back to the arena. I mean, at this juncture,
it's absolutely asinine what's going on at the end of these games in basketball.
It's out of control. It is. I agree.
And that I am not even joking about. It's unreal, to be quite honest.
It's a bad product right now. The college basketball is not a bad product. That's not what I'm saying. The end of game, some of the officiating is a bad product, and it's continuing to get worse as it goes.
The flow of the game has come to an absolute stall, in my opinion.
Yes, it has.
I mean, for real. I was reading Jerry's comment there. But those two things have got to be changed when it comes to basketball. All right, John, we're going to move on to a debate topic. Biggest surprise in men's and women's basketball. I'll give you 2 or 3 teams. You can either go 2 or 3 teams. Who is the biggest surprise, best surprise? Let's put it that way. Who's your surprise teams that's doing way better than you thought they would do?
Probably St. John's. I thought St. John's would be good, but I didn't think they would be this great this late in the year. Patino's done an outstanding job with them. I think they've really, really turned it on. They're playing for a top seed in March. My other one would be Wisconsin. Greg Gard in Wisconsin has done some really good things this year. Tanji is playing at an elite level. Tanjay, the guard for Wisconsin, for those that don't know, he's playing at an elite level. I gotta say Missouri is my third team. I think what Missouri's doing with Dennis Gates to go from 0-19 to where they are now in the SEC and playing for a top seed in March, I think they're playing outstanding. Now they did just lose to Arkansas, which I thought, Arkansas is playing much better, but they've won some really good games. They beat, I'm trying to think who they beat Kansas. Trying to think who else they beat. I think they beat Illinois.
They're like 9-5 in the SEC and went 0-18 last year. Oh, well, he got kicked again. I'm not sure what's going on with his computer. He'll come back in just a second. But all right, so I agree with Missouri, but and St. John's. I mean, all of those are good picks. I'm going to throw in Mississippi. I'm going to throw in Michigan State. I think Tom Izzo's done a great job. As far as best surprises, I'm going to throw in Michigan State. I think that Izzo has really turned that team around. They had struggled the last couple of years, barely making the tournaments. I'm not saying they weren't making tournaments, but kind of barely making tournaments the last couple of years. And right now he's in position to win the Big Ten. I think him or Michigan, are in position to win the Big Ten. Dusty May, with the job that he's done at Michigan, is another one up there that has done a really fantastic job. And then another one that I want to throw out, and this is going to surprise some people, but Richard Pitino at New Mexico.
Yeah, they're playing really well.
Has done – listen, they lost Jamal Mashburn Jr. and JT Toppin to the transfer portal.
They also lost Jalen House to graduation.
But I'm saying they could have had JT Toppin and Jamal Mashburn Jr. back, and they lost them in the transfer portal. And Richard Pitino is still like 23-6 or something and doing really well out there in New Mexico.
And I'm going to go with my biggest disappointments. Probably Dayton. I thought Dayton would be better than what they have been this year. They beat UConn to start the Maui early in the year, but from there they've just not been very impressive in conference play. Providence is another one. I thought Providence would be really, really good with Kim English and Bryce Hopkins, but they just
Mike, I'm not sure that was a real story, by the way. I did see a post in one of those groups, but I don't really think that was a real story, a true story.
No, some of those groups are out of control. Me and Brad talked about that today.
I don't think that was a true story.
I mean, maybe North Carolina. I thought, I think they're still ranked pretty high in KenPom at 39, but they've not had the greatest year. Now they're picking up play as it goes down the stretch, but my overall number one, I'm just going to say it, is Marquette. Cam Jones, Stevie Mitchell, that Marquette team was supposed to be in the top 10, top 5 all season long, and they just have not had a great year. Now, does that say that they're not going to turn it on around March and get into the tournament and make some hay? No, but they just haven't been the team that I thought that they was going to be. Cam Jones is what makes that team go, and just seems like that this team is just kind of in reverse mode right now. And they just haven't been playing the caliber of basketball that Shaka Smart is accustomed to them playing. And my other surprise, I forgot to tell you, I had another, was BYU. We was going to talk about that while we was here. What Coach Young has done to that, Richie Saunders was almost a
kind of keep the momentum.
Was almost a Kentucky commit. Mark Pope almost had Richie Saunders. He stayed back, and they've got this BYU team really doing some really great things. They beat Kansas. They went on the road, and they beat Arizona on the road in the McHale Center, a tough environment to play in. Fun team to watch. Wouldn't be shocked if they're a sleeper team to watch in the Big 12 tournament, and especially the NCAA tournament, because they can shoot the lights out of it. They're a fun team, fun watch. But other than that, those are mostly my surprise teams and disappointments.
All right, so my disappointments on the men's side of things, I'm going to throw it to the big boys here. Like Jerry said, there's 5 teams that was preseason top 10 that have fallen completely out of the top 25. I'm going to name 3 of them right now: Kansas, UConn, and North Carolina. We're talking about blue bloods here in college basketball. And I know there's a lot of other disappointments, but when you are the preseason number 1, when you're the preseason number 5, number 2, and you're a blue blood in college basketball, you are not expected to fall completely out of the top 25 before March. That's just – those are disappointments, if you ask me. I've got to throw it to the blue bloods, especially when there was so much preseason hype for these teams and for these schools.
Yep.
Now, let's go back and do the women's. I'll start with the biggest surprise teams. I think TCU is one of the biggest surprise teams. And I'm going to be honest with you. I think Tennessee is one of the biggest surprise teams in women's. I think that I would put Kenny Brooks in there and put the Kentucky girls in there, but I think bringing Georgia Amore with him, I think there was a little bit of expectations on the Kentucky team with bringing Georgia Amore. I don't know that. I think they've exceeded those, went beyond those, but I still think there was a little bit of expectations. But I'm gonna be honest with you, Kim Caldwell come from Marshall. Now she had 1 year there. She was a good coach, had the one good year, but to be able to come into the SEC, not only come into the SEC, but go into the storied Lady Vols and to turn that team around like she has in year one, it's kind of impressive. I'm not going to lie.
I'll give you a few of mine. Creighton. I think Creighton's had a really good year. They're 23-4. I think they're ranked number 22nd in the country.
They are this week. Yep.
Kentucky would be one, I think. North Carolina State is another one. They had just knocked off Notre Dame this past Sunday. I think that was a big win for the Wolfpack. I'm going to go Georgia Tech. I think Georgia Tech's had a really good year. Georgia Tech's done some really good things. Utah, out west, Utah's playing really, really well. Illinois, maybe South Dakota State is having a really good season. I think they got 22 votes in the last AP poll. I think they're like 27.
Grand Canyon is another one on the women's, and that coach out there, she is going to move on and do some great things. Grand Canyon coach.
Ole Miss is another one with Madison Scott and company. They're really, really good. I even go as far as say James Madison. James Madison's having a really good year. And then my last one would probably be Fairfield. Fairfield's having a fun season in that conference. A lot of good teams that are just outside the top 25 that are getting votes. And probably my biggest one overall would probably be I think Kansas State would be one, Brad. They're 25-4. They're 14th in the country. They've been up and down a little bit all year, but they're hanging around the top 15. That's a fun team. Now, for my disappointments on the women's side, it's a tough one.
Bo, you should probably record this because it's not going to happen too often.
Yeah. Brad is very hot tempt tonight, to say the least. Probably Arizona. Would be one, Brad, disappointment. I thought Arizona would be better than what they are, girls. They're only, I think, 17-12. Trying to think who would be another one. I thought Auburn would be a lot better this year. They're 12-15. They're not having a great year. I thought they would be a lot better.
Texas A&M is, but it's because of injury.
It is. It's
Texas A&M lost their best player. They had beat Kentucky and was doing pretty good, but they lost their best player and have just bottomed since then. She blew out her knee. And they're definitely one of them on the biggest disappointment.
Iowa State. I put Iowa State in here, Brad. I thought Iowa State would be a lot better than what they were, especially having Audie Crooks. They just haven't been able to really beat a top solid team.
It ends Thursday though, by the way.
And
Bo.
Yeah. That would be one. I don't know, Brad. I mean,
Here you go. It ends Thursday. You see that right there?
Missouri, maybe. I thought Missouri would be better than what they were. Missouri's had some tough luck, though. Missouri's run into, they've had some close games where they've been tight with some teams. They almost knocked off Kentucky the other night. They've just lost some close games. Missouri has. But I don't know. There's not a whole lot on the women's side compared to the men.
Well, so for me, both Iowa schools, I think Iowa and Iowa State have both had a little bit of disappointing seasons.
Well,
for both of them.
To be honest, you knew Iowa was going to go down, especially with Caitlin
Clark.
Clark.
But they've been at the top, and they brought in Lucy Olson, which was one of the better players in the transfer portal, and there was some hope that they could maybe not stay where they were, but at least I think there was some expectations that they would be better than what they have been.
Villanova was another one. Villanova's been pretty good recently. And they're not having the greatest years. I think they're like 16 and 12, 15 and 12 maybe. Villanova's usually a pretty good women's team. And
I'll tell you another one. I'm going to give you another one. And this is they've had an all-time coach there. Stanford has had a really, really down and bad year.
Yeah, they've not had a great year this year.
They lost their coach. She retired. Vandermeer retired. She was one of the greatest of all time. One of them. You have to at least give her that much. And they've got a new coach. They lost Kiki Irfin, who transferred out. On top of that, they do have Vandermeer's assistant, one of her assistants there, but she's in her first year. And in all of women's basketball, I think the biggest surprise disappointment is probably Stanford.
Yeah.
Stanford on the women's side has been an absolute beast at the top of the game for 40 years because of Vandermeer. And to see them struggling as bad as they are, I think they're 500 or under.
Something. Yeah.
Is like they're usually 2, 3, 4 losses is all they have, and they're in the top 5, top 10 most of the time. And to see them not be there. Now, what I say to you, disappointing as in the level that we are used to seeing them, not disappointing in the first-year head coach having to lose her best player, and it's just a tough situation.
It is. I agree with you.
All right, John, we're going to end the show with this one. NCAA tournament expansion seems to be heating up again. There's quite a bit of talk about it. Seth Davis will not shut up about it off CBS, just so you know. He has been on and on and on about it all season long, Seth Davis has. I'm not a big proponent of it, but I did see something from somebody, was it today or yesterday, that I shared that we'll get into a little bit more. But first, what are your thoughts about expanding the NCAA tournament?
I'm not a fan of it, Brad. It's been a big passion of mine since I was a kid. As I grow older, I begin to, love the game even more when it comes to college basketball. Seth Davis.
This is for you, Wireman.
Lord have mercy. But I don't think there's no expanding it, Brad. He mentioned there's a lot more good teams that talks about his argument where he uses data and a lot of analogies to defend it.
You talking about Seth?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, but you're going to get games like Virginia, Colorado State if you expand this tournament that we had last year in the first four. You know, I always liked Seth Davis as an analyst. I believe he's probably one of the best in the business, but I believe these opinions are misguided. You know, I don't know how to explain this to just
So
say.
here's what they say, okay? So there's only been 4 teams added to the tournament in the last 40 years, from 64 to 68, okay? There's only been 4 teams added to the tournament in the last 40 years, since 85. All right, so it's 40 years. What the argument for expansion is that there's probably over 100 more Division I teams now than there was in 1985. So you're expanding way more and have tons more teams, but you've only added 4 teams to the NCAA tournament.
Well,
so the chances that all of these teams that get added to Division I can actually make the field are less. So
here's another
that's
issue.
the argument.
There's a lot of viewership down for the playing games. That most of these playing games aren't very good. Okay, the playing games, you know,
I mean, that's a fair
season,
argument, and I don't think a lot of people even pay attention to it or watch them, to be honest.
The best part of March Madness for me, Brad, is the Cinderella stories, the upsets. When a mid-major takes down a power like you saw last year with Oakland.
But it has to be when they upset the big boys.
So wouldn't adding more teams?
No one's going to care. No one's going to care if Richmond upsets Marist.
Well, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
But here's to add to this, adding more at-large teams, I think would give spots to more mid-major teams. But it also gives open spots to power teams who do not deserve a bid. Let's look at the picture this year. You got a team like Indiana, a team like, say, North Carolina, which is playing better. I agree. Indiana's won a couple games here recently. They're playing as good too. But as a whole, the bubble is really, 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 really bad this year. It's so bad that the win for Georgia tonight probably puts them back on the bubble line over Florida. Do you really want those teams in the tournament?
No. So if you're going to expand it, I'm going to answer that real quick for you. If you're going to expand it beyond adding, say, 4 more teams as play-in games, okay? If you're going to actually take and expand it to 84 or 96 or whatever, you're going to add several teams.
Yeah.
I think the only way that makes any sense is that you take the conference regular season champions and they get an automatic bid if they don't win the conference tournament.
Here's where it gets
meaning your conference could have 2 automatic bids. It's not about all these at-large. I don't want to see an expansion where we put in the Illinois and the North Carolinas and the Mississippi States and the Virginias and there's if all we're going to do is add the big boys when they've had awful years, why the hell are we expanding?
Well, and here's another thing. The old saying goes, Brad, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Don't try to change the madness when there's really nothing wrong with it, because here's where it gets murky. Really, really murky. If they do expand this tournament, Brad, it's going to allow more teams that didn't do enough
ridiculous
in the regular season to make the tournament. And basically what that's going to do is going to water down the product.
What I'm saying to you,
Teams that
John,
don't
is there's
you know,
about 25 that are non-power conference mid-majors. If the regular season champion, who is probably, got 20 or 25 plus wins to go through the whole season, if they happen to not win the tournament, then they still get an automatic bid. So you include some little teams that is now making the NCAA tournament.
Where I have an issue, though, Brad, is where if you don't do enough in the regular season, say you're 1-11 in quad one games. Does a team that's 1-11 deserve to be in?
Hell no, they don't. That's why I'm saying you can't expand this field if all you're going to do is add in 5-11 conference teams or 6-12 that goes through their majors, the power conference that's 6-12. If that's all you're doing, why in the hell are we expanding?
Well, yeah, they do, Wireman. Georgia has wins over Kentucky and Florida. Those are two top-notch quad 1A wins. Like, they're probably safe at this point, to be honest. I mean, I wouldn't say safe, but they're like semi-safe to be in. No, I agree with you, Jerry. Selection Sunday is going to be a disaster if you just keep adding these teams in over and over and over and over and over like you do with the football.
Well, all right, guys, let's be honest.
The reality is
basketball. When it comes to basketball, John, it's about getting that extra money. Making the NCAA tournament is about getting that extra money. Okay, you get units for making the tournament. You get units for winning games, and it matters. So if you're from the ASUN, okay, if you're from the Patriot League, all right, and you could get a chance to get a second team in the tournament for these mid-majors, for these small schools, it's a big deal.
Well, look at it last year. Let's look at it from this angle, Brad. You had Indiana State last year. Larry Bird's home team.
Yeah.
They were the highest, I think the highest ranked mid-major to not make the tournament. You know why they missed? They had a quad 4 home loss to Illinois State. That was a lot of reason why they missed late in the year. They also didn't have a win over a team that was in the tournament.
But they won the regular season.
Now, did they have a legitimate gripe to have a more deserving of a?
I think they probably deserve to be in the field, to be honest with you.
Over Virginia, yes. But here's where I said it gets. If the NCAA does expand, it's going to allow teams just like this that didn't do enough in the regular season, just sort of like Indiana State, to get into the tournament. And that's where the expansion
but I would rather see those type. If you're going to expand, John, I would rather see those type teams play in that first round than to let the Virginias in that is 6-12 in the damn conference, and the ACC's terrible anyway.
The reality of all this, Brad, is fans are going to watch whether, they're going to watch the games regardless. Whether it's a good thing or if it's a bad thing.
The field thing that we've seen today, the top 8 seeds in each region would get a bye. It was 96 teams. The top 8 seeds in each region would get a bye. So it would be 8, 16, 24, 32. Then you would just have the 96 game that they would be sitting there. You would have the 64 teams, and they would play a 7th game, and your top 8 seeds would still only have to play 6 games. Now, the kicker is this. The regular season champion would get an automatic bid if they did not win the tournament. So your conferences could get at least 2 teams in, and then you could add maybe 8 or so at large, depending on how many conference teams had 2.
Yeah, I seen that, Wireman. He said Oklahoma State's getting ready to upset Iowa State.
Iowa State has not been playing good.
Yep. You want me to go through the scoreboard since we're off this subject?
Yeah,
I'll go through the.
because we're gonna close up the show here.
That's a good little topic. You could talk about that all day, I guess. It's one of those things where there's been a lot of people that's vouched for it, and there's some that's not. I'm in the.
Seth Davis won't stop talking about it.
Yeah, he's dead set on it. I'm just going to do top 25 tonight since we're in a hurry.
Okay.
Oklahoma State is basically they just won 74-68 over Iowa State. That probably knocks Iowa State out of a 2 seed. They're probably looking at a 3 seed now.
I don't think Iowa State's played good at all lately.
That's a bad loss to Oklahoma State. Tennessee leads over LSU 33-28. Mississippi State is down 53-27 at Alabama. Alabama's playing insane right now. Y'all, we played as good as we could have Saturday, but if Alabama keeps playing like this, as much as I'm not a proponent of liking Alabama, they could cut the nets down with who they got with Mark Sears in that backcourt. They're really good. South Carolina's down second half, 54-37 to Missouri. Louisville leads Virginia Tech 40-34 late second half. Georgia knocked off Florida 88-83. Oklahoma State just won, 74-68. Duke beat Miami. Struggles continue for Miami, 97-60. And Marquette beat Providence 82-52, I believe. Yep. And that's pretty much your updates on that. So,
all right. So I've got a final buzzer, and this is going to be my little deal here, I guess.
Well,
maybe John can add one too.
I'll let you just do it.
This is mine. So I saw some stats today. Carl Ravitch and Jimmy Dykes have been teaming up to call games this year. And if you're a Kentucky fan, you know they have done quite a few of Kentucky games. I have been saying for a while that it doesn't seem like games go very well when they're calling these games. So I've seen some stats today. Kentucky fans, we need to strike Carl Ravitch and Jimmy Dykes calling our games. So far this year, that tandem team of Jimmy Dykes and Carl Ravitch, those two guys, they have called 8 Kentucky games together.
Two of those wins was Tennessee and A&M.
Kentucky is 2-6, guys. Kentucky is 2-6 when Carl Ravitch and Jimmy Dykes announces our games. Is there something wrong with this picture to you guys? Because right now, I'm saying kick their ass out of the gym. Give me a call. I'll happily fly down and call your game for you. I'm not playing at all. ESPN, I'll do it for $500. Just fly me down. You don't have to pay me millions. Sure as hell don't want. And Carl Ravitch, let's be honest, he's a baseball guy. He can't even understand that conference teams are going to be 500 when they play each other. I mean, wow. That's all I got to say.
Now, Dykes did have the Gonzaga game too.
He done 2 games without Carl Ravitz. Dykes did. Dykes has done 10 games, and Kentucky's 4-6 in those games. I'm saying together, Carl Ravitz and Jimmy Dykes have called 8 games. Kentucky is 2-6 in those games.
Wireman. Impossible to win a game with Dykes and Ravitch on the mat with Don Daly and Terry Oglesby officiating. Oh, that's pretty good.
I'm going to tell you right now, I'll do it for $500. I was trying to read some of these comments.
I don't care for Jimmy Dykes was one of them.
Amy Huffman Smith says she doesn't care for Jimmy Dykes. Jimmy's been a homer for the team we are playing this year. It seems like whoever that is.
I got a final buzzer real quick. What if you move off this?
I'm done. Just get rid of Jimmy Dykes and Carl Ravitch, please.
I got a final buzzer to add to that. I don't, officiating has been really, really tough this year, Brad, from all angles, from reviews to stoppages to fouls to technicals. But what I seen Saturday night in Tuscaloosa were official midway through the first half, follows Pope, blows his whistle at him, and follows him all the way down to the sideline.
He stalled the game to do it, too.
Is absolutely unprofessional. And Pope hardly ever says anything.
Well, now, Pope was talking to him.
He was, but Pope is one of those that rarely says anything.
But he did say something to this guy. I don't know what they were saying, what they were talking about. I'm sure Pope didn't say anything too inappropriate. I'm sure. But he was talking to the guy.
Here's my problem with this, Brad. For a grown man in a tightly contested game to basically blow his whistle and the fans watching and him run him down the sideline.
Mike, throat cancer has a whole lot to do with that. I think he's doing a really good job with what he's
doing. He's doing the best he can with it. I just think, to me, it's just unprofessional from an official standpoint. I just think there's better ways to handle that. And Oglesby did not handle that very well. The way he did that. That was just uncalled for. That was my final buzzer. I think these officials are getting
officiating sucks in every sport, in everything. It sucked in football. I think people are blind in one eye and can't see out of the other. That's what I think.
The problem you got some officials that are ego driven. And when I say ego driven, I mean TV time.
Dickie V likes to say he could see that and he only has one good eye. Well, I'm going to tell you guys right now, most of these officials, they're blind in one eye and they can't see out of the other.
Well,
so they're worse off than Dickie V.
There's, we had TV Pat, TV Teddy, Valentine. I call him TV Teddy because he always wants to be the show. Then you got Pat Adams, which there's a lot more refs, I think, that's not as great as Pat Adams. We did, Wireman. We talked about that earlier, about the time swaps. Just go back and re-listen to it.
Yeah, we already did all that. Where you been, Wireman?
Byron's been asleep worrying about the coronavirus apparently and the bats. But anyways, I just thought that was one of mine. I just thought, I just think that's unprofessional for a referee to act like that in a heavily involved game like that. That's just, to me, that's just unprofessional, to be honest.
Aren't most of these referees?
So,
all right, home field, SportsCast for 15% if you're a first-time buyer. They got some really cool retro college gear. Check them out.
Amy, let me say this to Amy's point. Amy, we was not winning that game. And I say that, we was down 3-point guards, which we played good the first half. But with the way the game was called, we was not winning that game. But it was impossible to win that game because the referees was not going to let us win that game. There's 2 plays in general.
I just want to see
the Ortega
calls be even.
The Ortega Owe foul, and then the Colin Chandler foul late in the game was just absolutely ridiculous. He didn't even step on Mark Sears, and they caught a foul.
Stop calling phantom calls when there is distance. You can see space in between the players. There's nothing there. They did that on Brandon Garrison a game or 2 ago and called a foul on him. They've done that to Butler a few times this year. They now done it to Owe the other day. I can count on, they've done that in 5 or 6 games to different players this year.
I can handle.
Where there's space in between, it's not even fathomable that there was any touch because you can see space. That's what I'm talking about. They are blind in one eye and can't see out of the other. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
I can handle losing, but when a game is just one-sided to one side, I have a problem with it.
If there is air in between me and you and they call a foul on me, apparently they're blind. They can't see. They need some Ray Charles sunglasses.
And to be fair to you, Amy, Amari Williams gets a horrible whistle, by the way, just so you know. He don't get a good whistle. I'll leave it at that. For him to be a big man, he does not get a good whistle at all. Rupp, anywhere. He does not get a great whistle.
I'm telling you, most of these guys need some Ray Charles sunglasses.
Oh. Oh, goodness.
I'm not even playing.
No, goodness.
That's what they do. That's what they need. Because they clearly can't see.
Oh, me.
Just telling y'all like it is.
Our show will be on tomorrow night. We're going to have a show at 7 tomorrow.
Yeah.
We're
Big
going
Blue
to
Hoops Cast. Tomorrow night, we're going to try to come on before the game and do a little bit of talk and kind of preview the Oklahoma game. Talk about the Tennessee-Kentucky game on the women's side Thursday night and how big that is. And then we're getting to the end of the season for the girls and another week for the guys.
Jerry said, "What was that, Brad?" That little head thing.
That was Ray Charles.
Yeah, you didn't watch Ray Charles?
That was Ray Charles with his sunglasses.
Yeah.
I just don't have the sunglasses.
Congrats. From all signs forward, I'm excited to see Butler and Robinson back in the lineup, Brad. All joking aside, let's hope that.
Let's hope they don't re-injure, and let's hope they don't get 3 fouls inside of 14 seconds.
Yep, I agree with you.
Because Hell, it could happen.
Yeah, it could. On the road.
I'm just saying. All right, guys. We will see you tomorrow night. And yeah, big game for Oway tomorrow night back in Oklahoma.
Yeah, he's going back to
and Garrison is back in Oklahoma. He went to Oklahoma State. So, but he's going back to the same state that he played in as well. So,
and I want to address something real quick before we get off here. I know everybody is talking about Brandon Garrison transferring. I've seen it all over Twitter. Let's stop this nonsense until it comes out of his mouth and it actually happens.
I like the kid. I think he has a lot of potential.
I do. But I think there's too many rumors out there about that.
As a backup, there's nothing wrong with Brandon Garrison.
That needs to be shut down until the season's over with. And till Brandon makes that decision himself. I just think it's nonsense.
Tomorrow night we're going to be on at 6 Central, 7 Eastern.
Throw out rumors that he's leaving and all this in the middle of the year. Like, I just think it's nonsense. So I'll leave it at that. So.
All right, guys, we're wrapping this up. This has been College SportsCast, the Big Fuss Show. This is week 27 and season 3, and we will see you guys tomorrow night for the Big Blue Hoopscast.
Have a good one. See you, Wyman.
Have a good night.
Can I please have your attention? There's all a commotion around here.
What are you talking about?
Let them yap at you.
It's actually very exciting.